We did see a pile on Eddie McGuire. His departure doesn't fix things, we know that. But his critics basically paint him as a card-carrying racist. How do you see Eddie McGuire?
I agree with you, Laura, and I don't intend to pile on to Eddie McGuire this morning either. I think the issue is bigger than one person, and it's bigger than Collingwood Football Club. There is systemic racism in this country, in almost every part of this country. And the good thing about the focus on Collingwood and the good thing in terms of Eddie McGuire stepping down is it's brought the issue to the fore. People are talking about it.
Yeah.
There is no quick fix when it comes to particularly structural racism. The first thing to do is to admit that it exists. The second thing to do is to understand that one must be patient in changing institutions, changing the way in which things have been done for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think in terms of Collingwood and the Do Better report, there are 18 recommendations. I've looked carefully at those recommendations, and it seems to me that many of the answers that Collingwood is looking for, given the fact that they actually asked for this report, lie within the recommendations of
that's right.
the report.
Linda, I just want to pick you up on that very point. Collingwood commissioned this report themselves. Other clubs, not just in the AFL, but outside of the AFL, in the sporting arena as it is, hasn't done this thing. So Collingwood is paying a price. Eddie McGuire is paying a price for actually, putting a mirror up to themselves in many ways.
Look, Eddie McGuire has made his decision, and I think that decision needs to be respected. But quite honestly, he does have a history in putting his foot in it, if you like, particularly with comments around Adam Goodes, comments around a female journalist, and the list goes on. But like I say, Laura, I think the issue is it is good that we are having this discussion. I think that the issue of structural racism can be dealt with, and there are ways in which any organisation can go about doing that. And I agree with you 100%. This is not isolated to Collingwood. Structural racism exists in many clubs, in many sports, across the board, and I think there is some very good work going on to address the issue.
Yeah,
there needs to be more done,
but
at least we've started.
It's beyond the clubs, and I want to ask you about some of the practical things we can do in a moment. But
sure.
Hetier Lumumba has also complained of his treatment at the hands of Waleed Ali. What do you think about that?
Look, I'm not terribly familiar with that. I think it had something to do with a show on one of the commercial channels. I'm not quite sure, but and I don't want to comment on personal issues or on individuals. Mr Lumumba has taken a very brave stand, and he has been a loyal servant, as I understand, to Collingwood. I mean, when you think about it, let's use Collingwood as an example. It has a really high fan base. It has been an extremely successful club, and it has done some very good things, including the appointment of an Indigenous person to the board. And there's not too many clubs that have done that, and I think that needs to be recognised. But there are some very real things that organisations can do to address the issue of structural racism.
But what about individuals, Linda? These acts of racism, no decent person is unaffected by these stories of racism, but we tend to blame institutions when it comes down to the actions of individuals in many ways that no doubt, yes, they're cultivated by institutions. Yeah. But what's one thing an individual can do?
Well, I think the most powerful thing an individual can do, and I say this quite regularly, is make sure that you've educated yourself, particularly in the concept, through the concept of truth-telling. There is enormous information available now. There is no excuse anymore for someone not to be au fait with the true history of this country, and understand that words and racism hurts, and it is right throughout society, not to apportion blame, but there is no excuse. And I think the most powerful thing an individual can do is to make sure that they're educated and have a look at the way in which they see themselves. I mean, racism is almost, part of human nature, and every single one of us, no matter who we are, needs to examine our own values, our own life, and how we got to have the attitudes that we have, and recognise that we all have a role to play in addressing racism wherever it exists.
Well said, Linda Burney. Always great to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.